What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JBsports back again with another one. It's on like a pot of neck bones. Big news in the sport of boxing. Great news for the sweet science. As unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. and WBO welterweight champion Terence Crawford have agreed to terms for a mega matchup that will take place in Las Vegas, Nevada, aka Sin City. The venue, TBA. But the fight is a done deal. Now they will officially announce this fight on July 29th at the Barclays Center. A day before a junior middleweight bout will take place between Danny Garcia taking on Garcia-Benavidez Jr. Now there will not be a multi-city press tour for this fight. The PBC does not typically do a multi-city press tour. They didn't do one for Wilder Fury 1, 2, or 3. They didn't do one for Canelo versus Caleb Plant. They didn't do one for Errol Spence Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. Now a lot of people say, wait a minute, JB Sports, Errol Spence Jr. pulled out of that fight due to an eye injury, so they couldn't have done a multi-city press tour for that fight. Well, Errol Spence Jr. pulled out of that fight like a week and a half before the fight. Now, it will be all access for Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford. They will have all access, but it will not be a multi-city press tour. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, this will be Errol Spence Jr. last fight at 147. Therefore, it will not be a two-fight deal. Because Errol Spence Jr., win or lose, is going up to 154 in this next fight. Now, Crawford wins, he could stay at 147, or he could go up to 154 and chase the undisputed there, because he will be able to petition the WBO for #1 position and mandatory spot for Jamal Charlo's WBO junior middleweight title. He will be able to do that, or he could stay at 147 and take on Keith One-Time Thurman or Jawan Boots Ennis. But it's a definite that this is Errol Spence Jr. last fight at 147. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, say the fight ends up a draw. Maybe then Errol will try to squeeze his body down one last time at 147. But he's been doing a lot of sacrifice with his body to get down to 147. And him and his team are ready to move up to 154 after this fight and chase another title in another division and try to add on to his hopefully Hall of Fame resume. Because unlike Terence Crawford, he's only been a champion in one weight division. Terence Crawford has been a champion at lightweight and junior welterweight and welterweight. So he's a 3-division world champion. So he's pretty much has solidified his case as a Hall of Fame fighter, that being Terence Crawford. I believe Errol Spence Jr. is a Hall of Fame fighter too. You got Arturo Gatti in the Hall of Fame. If Arturo Gatti is a Hall of Fame fighter, then Errol Spence Jr. damn sure is a Hall of Fame fighter. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But give Errol Spence Jr. a pat on the back. Give Errol Spence Jr. a standing ovation. Give Errol Spence Jr. a round of applause for making this fight come to fruition. He did everything he said he was going to do. Clean up his side of the street, and then go look for Terence Crawford to take on him for undisputed. And this is finally going to happen for November of 2022. Now, the venue is TBA. The two front runners to host this fight is the MGM and T-Mobile Arena. We will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But Errol Spence Jr. had already agreed to terms a month ago. It was going to be a 50-50 split. That was agreed real quick. It didn't take long for both parties to come to that agreement, because Errol Spence Jr. did a 50-50 pay-per-view split with Yordanis Ugas. So all the people that was out here saying that Errol wanted an 80-20 split, or Errol wanted a 60-40 split, or Errol Spence Jr. has budged and now he's willing to take a 55-45 split, that's fugazi, that's cap. That was never a problem. It was always going to be 50-50. The problem was the guarantee between the PBC and TC. And Errol Spence Jr. once again stepped up to the plate and took a cut from his original guarantee that he agreed to take on Crawford. And they took a cut from his and gave it to Terence Crawford and added on to the guarantee that the PBC had originally offered him, that he had so far reneged on, so far refused to accept, and now we have a fight. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But very, very excited by this particular matchup, man. Very, very excited. And I've got to give credit to Errol Spence Jr. for making this fight come to fruition. Got to give him a lot of credit. A lot of people said he was ducking the smoke. He didn't really want to fight Chance Crawford. He was talking about strap season, and he never was trying to fight Chance Crawford. But Errol Spence Jr. did everything he said he was going to do. He said he's going to collect the belts on his side of the street, and we're going to find out who really wants to fight. In all actuality, he could have been like, all right, I accept the terms, and I'm going to let them figure it out between TC and the PBC. But he looked over there and saw that they was having problems agreeing the terms. He was like, okay, I don't want this fight to fall by the wayside. This is going to be my last fight at 147. All right, Al Haymon, take a cut of my guarantee and give it a bud, and let's make the fight happen. And that's exactly why this fight is now a done deal. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. I'm going to do a quick breakdown on this fight. I'm going to break it down in depth, in the week leading up to the fight. But as far as my first impressions of this particular matchup, I think it's going to boil down to the jab. Errol Spence Jr. does a good job of establishing the jab, doubling up on the jab. So Chance Crawford must take the jab away. If he's unable to take Errol Spence Jr. jab away, he's not going to beat Errol Spence Jr. Everything that Errol Spence Jr. does is predicated off the jab. He sets everything up off the jab. He closes distance off the jab. He makes his opponent reset off the jab. He pushes his opponents to the rope, jabbing to the body, and then he starts throwing hooks to the body. Everything he does is off the jab. So Terrence Bud Crawford must disarm that jab of Errol Spence Jr., which is, in my opinion, the best weapon in boxing, the jab. And he has the best jab, not only in the welterweight division, but he arguably has the best jab in the sport of boxing. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Not so much the speed of the jab, but he has a real thudding jab, real stiff, strong jab. Kind of remind me of George Foreman's jab, real thudding jab that really sets everything up for Errol Spence Jr. If Terrence Crawford was able to take away that jab, then that'll go a long ways in setting the stage for him to get the victory and become undisputed welterweight champion. Let me know your thoughts about Errol Spence Jr. and Chance Crawford finally come to fruition. Follow me on Facebook, Gerard.Briscoe.3551. Follow me on Instagram, 9707 Gerard. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports. The man, the myth, the legend, and I holla.